Alright guys, good afternoon. Welcome to the Malta National Aquarium. My name is Nolly and I'm part of the education team, and I'll be telling you all about our sharks here today. Now to start off with guys, you are going to see a bit of a flurry happening at the top of the tank. That is because there is the last bit of some feeding happening. I will warn you though, you're not going to see any cool shark feeding from here, so if you want to be filming that, now isn't the best time, but just so that you're all aware and not waiting for that, okay? But I do promise you, there is plenty of other stuff to learn about the sharks, and they will be swimming past quite a lot, so you can take a look at them. So guys, to start off with, this tank here, we call it the main tank. In here we have got 380,000 litres of water, and it is all kept nice and toasty at about 25 degrees. That is because all of these animals come from the tropical Indo-Pacific, which is why we have a lovely coral reef scene here. And on the other side of the tank, we have the big shipwreck area, and it's made to look like the open sea. And this is the kind of areas you will find these animals living in. Now guys, before I get into the stars of the show, which is of course the sharks, I want to tell you a little bit about where they live, and that is the coral reef. Now, before I start, what do we think corals are? Should we have hands up? Corals are plants. You think corals are plants? It is a living organism, you're right. But do you think it's a plant or an animal? What do you think?
I'd say
A mix. Okay, that's clever. What do you mean? Or are you just going to say a mix? What do you think? A mix. Okay, we'll leave it there. Any other guesses? Should we say plants or animals? Okay, so you're half right, because they're animals, they're not plants, but they live with their best friends, who are plants. Excuse me. There you go. So, I like to imagine a coral like a big block of buildings, like a big apartment block. And this big apartment block has polyps living in their apartment, but also their roommates, the algae. Now, the polyps are the animals, and there are lots and lots of polyps all living together on this big skeleton. But living with them are their best friends, the algae. And the algae, I like to say, are the roommates who know how to cook. What they do is they feed the polyp. They make all of the burgers, all of the pasta, they make sure everyone has food. What they really do in real life is they photosynthesize. So they get energy from the sun, and most of the energy that the polyp gets comes from the algae. Now, we also have the polyp part, which is an animal, and they have tentacles. They are kind of like the cousins of the jellyfish. And what they do is they will grab hold of anything that floats past, but they can only really make themselves things like chips, or burgers maybe, or a sandwich. So they can't get all of their food, which is why they live with algae. Now, how many of you guys have heard of coral bleaching? Any of you guys? Yeah, some of you? Now, coral bleaching is where coral turns white. It is what's happening a lot in the Great Barrier Reef, for example. Now, the thing with this is, it is when the algae leaves the coral. Imagine the apartment block that they live in catches fire. Are you guys going to sit there, or are you going to get out? Of course, you're going to get out. You don't want to sit there whilst it burns. So, the algae say, it is so hot in here, I am leaving. So the algae leave. And the algae are what gives the coral the beautiful colours. But what else does it give them? Food, exactly. They are a roommate who can cook. And if your roommate who can cook leaves, you're going to get quite hungry from only eating crisps and sandwiches after a while. Which is why the algae, or the polyp, can live for a little while without the algae. But eventually, it dies without them. Now, to put all of this into more sciencey terms, guys, the coral needs their algae. And when the water gets too hot, the algae leaves. If the water goes back to normal, the algae goes back in, and everything is back to normal. But where our water is getting hotter and hotter, and it's not cooling back down, the algae is leaving, the corals are bleaching, and the coral reef is dying. Now, what does this have to do with our sharks here? 25% of marine animals, or animals that live in the sea, live on coral reefs, but coral reefs only cover 0.1%. So, this tiny little place in the ocean has a quarter of the animals. And at the moment, we are losing our coral reefs, which is just one of the problems that our lovely sharks are facing. Let me tell you some more about the animals who live around the reef. The first one, it's in its name, is the black-tip reef shark. Have any of you guys seen those small sharks swim past whilst I was talking? The small ones with the pointy noses, yeah? Hopefully they swim past again. There's one up the top there. The black-tip reef shark is the traditional shark. A pointy nose, pointy fins, and yes guys, very pointy teeth. Which is why when we feed them, we use a big long set of tongs and we put them in on the side of the tank. They swim past and they grab the food. But the other sharks are not the same as these ones.